In today's video, I'm going to talk about how to take a long exposure photograph. So if you've ever dreamed about taking those dreamy waterfall shots with the silky smooth water, this will show you how to do that. Long exposures are also good for other things. Taking pictures at the seaside with waves, you can really smooth out the waves, but also in things like sunrises and sunsets. If you want to get more colour into the sky, a long exposure will help to do that because it helps saturate your sensor with all the colour that's there by exposing it to that colour for a longer period. We're going to do this using an ND filter, and I'll give you two super tips today. One is about choosing your filters, especially when you're getting started and don't want to spend a fortune on them. And the other is I'm going to show you another technique where you can use long exposure photos to get rid of unwanted items in your photo. If you're new to this channel, I'm Richard Gill. I'm a professional photographer. On here, I give you tips and tricks that will help you take better photos. So first of all, let me talk about ND filters, and I'm just going to grab my filter pack. So I've got my filter pack here, and what I recommend you do, just especially when you're starting out to save some money, is go and look for your biggest lens and look at the diameter at the end, and in my case it's 77 millimeters. Now if you buy all your filters at 77 millimeters diameter, you know they're all going to fit that big lens, but the trick is you can then buy these little adapter rings. Now these literally cost $2 or $3, or £2 or £3, so it's a really cheap way of then making those fit all your other lenses. So today I'm going to use an adapter. I'm using my 24 to 70 lens, and it has 67 millimeters diameter on the lens where you screw on the filters. So I just buy an adapter that converts from 67 to 77. That way I can use the filters that fit my biggest lens on my smaller lenses, and that's a cheap way of getting started. Of course, if you do want to get the very best, you could go and buy one something like a Lee filter kit, and that comes with its own set of adapters, and you can just slot in your lenses, and there are some advantages to that. But when you get started, you don't want to spend a fortune, this is a great way round it. I'm here actually in the middle of Kendal. This is the River Kent flowing behind me, and you can see there's a nice scene. I'll be having a paddle in the water here, but there's a weir here, and actually we haven't had a lot of rain for a couple of weeks, which is quite unusual for the Lake District. But we have got this weir here with a nice waterfall, and I'm going to. Problem is, it's 11:30, so the sun's almost at its peak on a nice sunny summer's day. Now, to make that scene get all dreamy, get that very soft, silky look to my water, I know I need an exposure time of about a half to 1 second, somewhere around there. And I'd probably take 2 or 3 shots at slightly different exposures, maybe half a second, 1 second and 2 seconds, and see which one looks the best. So how am I going to do that? Well, I could use a very narrow aperture, get my ISO as low as it'll go, which in my case is 50, and see what that gives. But in reality, I don't think it's going to give long enough on a day like today. So my other option is to use an ND filter. And I'm going to use a 6-stop ND filter because I think that'll be enough to get around to the, sorry, I'm just looking around for where Obi's going, get around the half-second mark. So I tend to use 2 filters particularly for this kind of thing, either a 6-stop or a 10-stop if I want to get a longer exposure. And by having them all the same diameter, I could combine the 2 together and end up with 16. Now, one other filter you might want to add, and I'll probably take one with and without, is a polarizing filter, because polarizing filters help a lot with things like reflections in the water, and just by changing the the amount of polarization, you can reduce or enhance those and see if that improves the look of your photo. I've just fitted the polarizing filter to my video camera. I don't know whether this is going to work, but I just wanted to show you what I'm trying to do. And if you just look at the water surface as I rotate the polarizer, you will see how it changes, going probably lighter and darker, especially the bit just in front of where Ovi's walking into the scene. And that's how I would use my polarizing filter while I'm taking a photo. So we're going to take the shot at a few different exposures and let's see what happens. This is my second location. It's called the Box. It's the Arts and Media Complex for Kendall College, and as you can see, it's a really interesting shape. I'll just have a walk round so you can see what it looks like. So I'm actually going to take the photo around from this other side because otherwise I'd be shooting straight into the sun. You can see it's got all these, it's like slate tiles on it, all these interesting shapes and curves. Now, the problem often when you're shooting like iconic landmarks like this is that somebody is going to walk into your shot, especially if you're in a busy place. You know, if you're in the middle of London, you want to take a picture of a famous landmark or something. There's probably a lot of other people doing the same thing. So how do you get around that? Well, I'm going to show you how using an ND filter. Well, behind me is the building I want to photograph, and I've set my camera up almost for this clip of the video in the same sort of way that I'm going to compose my shot. And what I'm going to do, because it's actually quite quiet today, the college hasn't got many people in it because of all the COVID stuff. So what I'll do is I'll actually walk through the shot and show you the effect of what an ND filter can do. For this shot, I want a really long exposure. I'm going to set my camera into bulb mode, and I'm going to use a timer on my phone, just a simple stopwatch timer. I'm going to expose it for at least 2 minutes. And what I'm also going to do is I'm going to stack up the number of filters I put on the camera. So I'm going to put my 6-stop and my 10-stop filter on so that I can get that long exposure. I'm also going to set a very narrow aperture, probably the narrowest one I can get on my lens, which will be somewhere around f/22. And it's it's an experimentation process. This, you've got to take a couple of shots, and it will take a long time for your camera to process them after you've taken them, so don't be worried by that long delay you get after you've finished pressing the shutter. And just see what works and it enables you to take out the people. What I'm going to do is set my little GoPro up somewhere so that you can see me walk through the shot, and then I'll show you the finished shot and the effect that it has of taking out the people. And really what's happening is, because the main scene is exposed to the camera for those 2 minutes or so, and somebody walking through your shot is really only going to be there for a few seconds, then the image of them is overridden by your subject. So it's a really cool way of getting a shot of an iconic building when there are people walking across your scene. So let's take the shot and you'll see what happens. So I've set my camera running in bulb mode. I've got a stopwatch running on my phone, and I'm going to walk through the shot. So I'm just going to move the little GoPro over here so you can see me walk through while the camera is still exposing the photo. So if I walk across here, and we'll walk back again. Let me check how the timer's doing now. I'm going for about 1 minute 40 my exposure. So I'm going to give it another 20 seconds or so, and then I'm going to stop that. If you've enjoyed this video, please do give it a like. And I hope now you have a good understanding of some of the applications of ND filters. Of course, if you're into video, you'll use them a lot all the time as well, just to improve the image on your scene, or to cope with different lighting effects. Now, you could also share your photos in the Nifty 50 Photographers Facebook group, and I'll put a link to that in the description. I always welcome your comments and feedback, so please feel free to leave a comment on the video. If there's anything else you're struggling with, anything you'd like to see covered in this series, then please add that to the comments, and I'll do my best to make a video on it, and also to reply to anything that you comment about. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.